What's up, guys? Welcome to the May Tidal Gardens live show. Boy, it's been busy here. I have to admit, we had a couple of friends come over yesterday from Canada. So, do you guys know March from Fragbox Coral? He was here, and also Patrick from Reef Wholesale. Now, Patrick has been here before, but it was March's first time, and March has his own YouTube channel, and he was like overjoyed shooting some footage. So keep an eye out for that. But that was most of yesterday. And yeah, there's just been a lot of really cool projects that are happening here now, just in the studio space. So this is the most under construction that this place has been in a good long while. I've been working on like the cloud ceiling in the studio for ages seemingly, and for the most part that's like settled down, and there's a little bit more that could be done, but it's more or less done. But then I started on another soundproofing project, and that started on Tuesday, so this place is a little bit of a mess, and it's gonna be a mess for at least another 12 hours of actual work. So there's that going on. So anyways, we are starting a little early. Usually I like to do a 10-minute countdown to make sure that the audio and video is working out. This is a different camera, and that I always get a little bit experimental. So at any given time, one of these live streams can just go off the rails technically, because believe it or not, since I've been doing this show for, I'd say, close to 10 years now, it feels. And that's like every month for like, no, let's say like 7-8 years. Almost every single show, we're trying something new, some little wrinkle. So on this particular show, technically, which I'm sure that very few of you actually care about, it's a different camera, a different capture card, same mic and everything like that, but yeah, we're trying different things. So it looks like the camera that's on me is looking good, and I didn't proofread or proof the broadcast file that's going to show up behind me in 7 minutes. So fingers crossed. Hopefully that goes well. There's always some mysticism that goes on when it's time to hit the export button, because anytime there's like software updates, which there's always software updates, you never know what you're going to get. So hopefully the 2-hour actual choral portion of the show goes super well. Let's see. So in addition to what's going on construction wise, just in the studio space, the systems downstairs, we've done some smaller projects, smaller but meaningful projects. And I think I'm just gonna have to do a building update video to get everybody caught up. None of those things individually are things that I would like say, oh yeah, these are super important, I need to talk about them. But as a collective, they're kind of cool, and they make life a lot easier. So anyway, hopefully you guys are having a good weekend. I'm having a pretty good weekend. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's been really, really chill here, and it's gonna be chill tomorrow. Like my weekend guy he's not here for today, and tomorrow it's just gonna be myself. I can just sit here and brainlessly do construction work in my studio. I know, like construction fan, right? I'll be cosplaying as a construction handyman, and then on Monday, like most of the staff is going to be taking off for Memorial Day. So it's just going to be me and one other person. So it's going to be quiet again. There's going to be no shipping, obviously, because it's a federal holiday. So yeah, I'm chilling. Maybe I might mow the lawn again or something, but yeah, taking it easy. Hanging out with you guys, selling some coral, that type of stuff, right? So how are we all doing? Oh yeah, there's still a lot of news to catch up on. It's probably been a good long while since I talked to you guys, and I'm sure I'm gonna have to bring this up again and again. I should probably even like scribble this down so I remember to bring it up again But I had two trips where I went out. One of them was to Minnesota, and I visited Bulk Reef Supply. I've never been to I was about to say I've never been to Minnesota before. Yeah, so I've never been to Bulk Reef Supply before. Never been to Minnesota before. And that was like a really cool trip because like Ryan I've met before, but we've only like really just chatted in passing. We didn't talk for more than like a half hour before my actual visit to BRS. But when I went there, it was like a really cool time. I had dinner with Ryan, and then the next day we shot like so many videos. I think that we plowed through 8 videos, and each of those videos was like an hour long. And so he's going to be releasing those like once a month or so for the next 8 months. Um, I sent him like a bunch of like our B-roll just to make our topics flow more nicely. But yeah, it was legitimately like an 8-hour day, but it was a solid. The record light on the camera was on the entire time, and we just sat there and just like knocked out subjects. So that was a really cool experience actually, because it's like, oh yeah, what's stopping me from recording more? I don't produce any videos here, it seems, but yeah, it was cool just to just sit there and just like hardcore record all that just straight through. So that was really neat. Okay, before I get to my other story, we got 3 minutes on the countdown. I want to quickly say my thank yous, right? So first off, the corporate sponsors. Thank you to Ecotech Marine and Polyp Lab. And then to you guys, starting first with the patrons. We got Angela Sherman, Big Lord Chi. This is on Patreon, by the way. Brandy Camp, Harkins Aquatics, Jeremy Altman, aka 2 Please, Scott Williams, Elaine Martinassi, Alan Jackson, Ann Lewis, Chuck Admire, D Rose, Greg Bauer, Greg Zimmerman, Jordan Marty, Keith Singer, Kyle Jameson, Lisa Clow, Lacree Fine Art, Lynn Holt, Michael Shelley, Puddle Aquatics, Reef Infidel, Ryan Baker, Sheila All, Aul, I don't know how to pronounce that, All, Skylar Korn, Sue Hemmons, Thomas Tarrant, and Tim Garner. And on the YouTube member side of things, we have Keith Holland, Steven13, JB Bryan, Terry Kuhn, Stories Reef, Herb777, Justin Harden, and 328 Reef. So thank you all so much for your support. It really does help. Believe that. So guys, all right, we got this much left to go. I recently got back from Dallas. This is the second little part of the story. I went there for Aquashella, and I never really expected this, but as a destination for me, Dallas is about as super packed a schedule as you could possibly imagine. I don't know what it is, but there's so many people that I know there that live in the Dallas, Texas area, like the greater Dallas, Texas area, I should say. And so aside from just the Aquashella event itself, it's just like a lot of people to hang out with and talk to. And I have to make time for almost everybody, because I mean, some of them are making like major concessions to come hang out. Like one friend in particular, like he was in California like during that entire weekend, and he made like a special like change of plans trip to come back to Dallas to meet me for like dinner on Sunday night. Another guy was he was working like on assignment for like a job, and he tried to book a flight to come back to Dallas, meet me, and then fly back to his job. Like insane, right? So when that happens, you have to try to meet them, right? But fantastic time, really good time. I got to meet with almost everybody that I was hoping to see there. I know that there's like a couple of people that I only got to see like pretty much as the show was winding down, and the different booths and everything were getting broken down. So yeah, it was super duper hectic, but at the same time pretty wonderful. Okay, I hit the button and it looks like things are working so far. That's always nice when things work out like that. Back in the day, there was a thing where we would hit like the go button basically, and sometimes this thing would just bog down. But now that I think of it, I think it might have been like my computer was too weak or something. Now that I've got a much more substantial uh, bit of tech here, it's not so bad. Okay. Anyway, I've been ignoring chat for this entire time I've been monologuing. Let's get into it. So let's see. Bob Purcell. I was moving a rock, and I think I hit and damaged one of the heads of my hammers. It looks alive. Do you think it will heal, or is it a goner? So, generally speaking, when you bonk something like that, it's going to be just fine. Generally speaking. Now, the problem with hammers, torches, and frog spawn is that they're really susceptible to like bacterial issues. And so sometimes like a wound like that starts like this infection cascade. And if that starts to happen, you want to kind of try to isolate that bacterial nonsense that's going on and try to save the rest of the colony. So just like chop off that one's head and try to yeah, keep the others safe. You could try like an antimicrobial dip, something like an iodine-based solution that can help, but generally speaking, just hitting it with a rock is not going to be the end of the world. Lately, not lately, like so, for a good long while, we would have some bacterial issues with our Euphilia and our Fimbriophilia, and it's very bizarre because it'll be like one head out of 100 will just die, and then a couple more around it will die, and then nothing else will happen. 3 months later, another head dies, and a few others next to it, they die. Or like a really nice torch, a single head of a torch, out of nowhere, looking great one day, the next day it is just all skeleton and gone. So we're like, okay, there's some bacterial weirdness going on. Let's just nuke the entire system, running like a 3x dose of Cipro, which is like an antibiotic whole tank treatment. And we did every drop of water in this entire place. We just Ciproed everything. I mean, we tried it first on a smaller system just to make sure that like it wasn't completely catastrophic, like the effect of it. But once we were comfortable enough that the Cipro by itself wasn't going to like seriously harm the corals or the fish, we did it everywhere. And since then, knock on wood, knock knock, things have gotten a lot better with the hammer torches and frog spawn. So that is a tool out there that is at your disposal. It's a fairly new thing that people are messing with. A lot of, not too many people are doing the whole antibiotic thing, but we've noticed really positive things in certain corals that were giving us some issues bacteria-wise, and especially with these Euphilia and Fimbriophilia. Atkins Nature Aquariums. Hey Than, listening while doing tank maintenance. Nice, nice. Jessica, glad I've caught a live finally. Welcome. Hello everyone. Hillbilly Reefer, what's up? Be the Fountain. You should invite people to your place more so they don't have to fly to see you. Yeah. So it's a hard sell, right? It's a hard sell to get people to like, and I'm talking like industry people. It's a hard sell to get them just to take a special trip just to see Tidal Gardens, because although Tidal Gardens is pretty cool, there's not a ton else to do around here. And it's not like, oh yeah, Tidal Gardens is located in Paris or Las Vegas, where there's like a ton of things to do, right? There's a ton of like historic stuff or whatever you're into. This Akron is not Singapore, right? It's not Tokyo. It's not someplace cool. So it's basically just Tidal Gardens. And obviously like we go out to like eat at dinners and stuff like that, and lunches, and like I know all the good spots to eat. But if you're looking for anything other than coral farming here, you ain't gonna find it. So that's the challenge, right? I mean, it's pretty boring. Like, what do I do when I'm not like doing coral farming stuff? I'm literally like watching videos on YouTube of like goats clearing pastures on a time lapse. Like that's my idea of a good time these days. I'm like the most boring dude ever. Dangles, also in Ohio in here, so you know what's up. You're probably watching those goat videos too. All right, W Mars, what up, y'all? In the market for a super reliable doser, at least two heads. What's everyone's favorite? And it needs to be easy to set up without Wi-Fi. Without Wi-Fi. Um, you're not gonna like my answer exactly, but I'll give you an answer. And strangely enough, it does not have Wi-Fi. It is Ecotech, sponsor of the Tidal Gardens YouTube channel. They make my favorite dosing system. Those what are they called? Varios, not Varios. All their stuff starts with a V. Vortec, Vectra. What's the name of the Ecotech dosing pump? I'm so bad at this. Versa, the Versa dosing pumps. So technically they work on Bluetooth, not Wi-Fi, but so far they've been the most reliable for us, and they're dead silent. They're really easy to use. We've used so far like the Neptune one. We've used the Camuar ones. And there's like maybe another one that we've used throughout, but pretty much all of them are getting swapped out for the Ecotech one. I really like those. Matthew, when setting up a brand new frag system, how long do you cycle and let mature? And when you start to keep corals in it? You really don't have to wait very long. Like the nice thing about corals is they pretty much self-cycle as long as you're not dumping in like a ton of food to feed the corals or doing something crazy. Like you can literally just set coral in there and it'll be okay. What we also started to do was just to like seed, like the whole bacteria stuff. And this is like a new thing. We never used to. We used to like, put in like a dead shrimp or something, or just to feed that tank to get it going. Nowadays, I don't even know if I would recommend that. If you're just doing like coral only, like frag system or a quarantine system, just put them in there and don't feed the tank. Let it do its thing and put in bacteria like a little bit at a time, because the bacteria probably will help feed the corals in addition to like just populating with with healthy strains to break down any nutrient that does kind of build up, which should be next to nothing, by the way. Okay, Dangles is asking, I have a move coming up in less than 1 year, about an hour and a half away. Currently, my tank is fish only with live rock, but I want to start adding corals. Should I delay adding corals until after the move? Or is there an LPS that I can add that won't be super delicate in the context of a tank move? Okay, so tank moves are insanely stressful. Like, it really doesn't matter that you're moving an hour and a half away. That sounds like a short distance, but just the work involved in breaking down an operational tank, moving it, setting up an operational tank, and moving and transferring all that livestock in. That is panic worthy. It is so much work. I've told this story before, but one time, like a 75-gallon tank, its stand was failing on me. So it's like, I have to break this tank down. And since I'm breaking down this tank, I may as well just upgrade it to like a 120. Cool. So I'm breaking down a 75-gallon tank and putting up a 120 in its place. Okay. Um, I think that just because I was working solo for most of it, took every bit of like 12 to 15 hours, stressed all of the animals out like crazy. And then I eventually had to like call in a favor to a friend to help me on that like last stretch of that move, which again, it's moving to the exact same spot. uh, it was so difficult and so stressful, like almost had a nervous breakdown sort of stressful, that to this day, and that was 20 years ago, that same friend keeps bringing up the fact that he came and helped. And he just came in to help for like the last few hours of that move. Like the entire whole rest of the day, I was working on that. It sucked. So, my recommendation, against my own personal self-interest to sell you coral, is to do not do that. In fact, I would probably, if you're not exactly married to your fish currently, I would get rid of everything. Like sell everything down to the point where you do not have an operational fish tank, and then move it dry, set it up, and restart the whole thing, because it's bonkers how difficult that is. I mean, people do it. I don't recommend that. And sometimes I even recommend, if you wanted to keep everything that you currently have, I'd say set up a brand new aquarium at your new location, move all the livestock over, and fully break down the tank in the old location. Like if you have the ability to do that. But like, but doing a full like tank move, it sucks so bad that whatever you thought you were doing saving money or what, it's never worth it. It's so difficult. That's my rant. Moving sucks. And yeah, moving sucks in general. And you add this on top of that, it's a problem. Matthew, hopefully you have an Olive Garden up there. We do have Olive Garden. Yes. Yes, we do. Bob Purcell, team with Polar Reef and fly to the coral destinations. Yeah. Where LeBron James is from? Yes. I kid you not. LeBron James's Akron house is 5 minutes from here. Like the place where I used to go to the gym is across the street from LeBron's house. Literally one street over is like his place. So yeah, he lives in like a regular neighborhood. I mean, he's got like a $30 million mansion or something, but it is in a very normal looking place. So all of the other houses on the street are like, single family homes. And then, my gym. So yeah, he's very, very close by. Versa, yes. Yep. Getting caught up on chat, guys. Thank you. Okay. Veterans Farming Initiative. I'm the opposite. I run a non-profit farm. We have some goats, so I watch your videos on corals and coral farming. Hilarious. Hilarious. That's awesome, though. So, yeah, I don't know why. I ended up in GoatTube earlier this morning, just watching goats eat, just clear out properties that are overgrown. Would you agree with the assessment that you're the Dumbledore of the reefing world, all-knowing and got style? That's funny. So I actually don't know all of like the Harry Potter lore. I've seen most of the movies, but wasn't he kind of like a problem? Like, isn't he kind of a bit of a jerk for what he did to Harry Potter or something? I vaguely remember that he wasn't 100% a great dude. But then again, neither am I. So maybe. Rogue Aquariums, hello. Yeah, some people set up a giant Rubbermaid tub as a tank when moving things around. Yeah, it's kind of what you have to do. Like whatever it takes, and those big tubs do certainly help. But big Rubbermaid tanks they're big and cumbersome in their own right. It's a lot of work. SPS LPS Coral Frags. One of my friends has moved 3 times in 2 years. He wonders why he loses all his corals every time. Expect to lose everything. Yeah. If you can just get rid of everything and then do the move and build it back up, that's really the way to do it. And the other thing is like that's also another opportunity. If you have like fish diseases, coral pests and stuff like that, doing like these resets, it's it helps out. Like we do resets all the time here. It doesn't really seem like it, but we have no problem like shutting off an entire like tank from a system, take out all the corals and fish, do some treatments, hose out that entire tank with fresh water, spray it with vinegar, whatever is necessary, and then put everything back, fill it back up with like new salt water, and then reattach it to the system. We do that very frequently, and it's so helpful for like managing problematic pests, algae, disease, whatever. B says, I think you underestimate how much of a destination people would find Tidal Gardens in and of itself. Eh, it's pretty good. It's pretty cool. Getting better. Again, a lot of construction projects that kind of like snuck up on me here. I got a deal I couldn't say no to, and I will catch you all up on that later. It is studio related, not fish or not coral farm related. So the YouTube algorithm is probably not going to love that video. I'm just going to say, but the studio here is cool enough that it is worthy of its own talk. Dave Chappelle's in Ohio too. Yes, he's further away though. He's like about a good 3-4 hours away. Yeah, Dangles says I live close to Dave. I see him out regularly. Cool. Everyone loves Dumbledore. Do they? Do they though? Okay, let's see. Rogue Aquariums. I'm not looking forward to the day that I have to move my 600-gallon tank. No, that would suck. And stand as well as my 365-gallon frag system. It's going to be a nightmare. Yeah, that is. I mean, moving a 600-gallon tank completely empty is I remember because I've got two 600-gallon tanks and a staff and professional people to help move, and it was still worth stressing out about. These are empty aquariums. Like getting if I needed to somehow move all of the tanks out of this facility, yeah, I don't know. That would be bad. Miguel, hi there, Than. Quick question. My acroporas in the store are always have polyp extension, but in my tank, my acroporas in the store always have polyp extension. In my tank, after a day, no more polyp extension. They don't lose color and they grow. Thank you. Okay, so when acros don't have polyp extension, I always think, is there something nipping at them? So is there like a fish in there that might be bothering them? Are there flatworms that could be bothering them? Things like that. Because most other things, it's not usually going to be bothering acros to that degree. So, I mean, do you have any dwarf angels or anything like that? Do you have an angelfish of any kind in your tank? Because usually those will absolutely cause acros to never open up again. But yeah, like a much worse problem would be there's flatworms. Yeah. Lincoln Towns. I used to live in the same town as MC Hammer in Tracy, California. He would hang out all day in the magazine section of the same 7-Eleven and talk on his phone. That's crazy. Yeah, I think the only run-in with celebrity I've had here was, do you guys know like the lead singer of was it Warrant? What's the band from like the late 80s that sang Cherry Pie? Like She's My Cherry Pie. Yeah, so those guys are from Akron. And I saw like the lead singer at the mall. We were shopping at Macy's, and we were like the only two people, shopping like the men's section at Macy's. I think it's Warrant, right? Am I getting my hair bands all mixed up? Who else? Oh, I can't remember her name. But there's another like really famous like Hall of Fame rock like she's a lady, a rock lady that was very popular in like the 80s. Um, I can kind of see she kind of looks like Joan Jett, but she's not Joan Jett. Yeah. Anyway, I can't remember. So I haven't met her, but she is a close family friend of one of my high school friends, and she would always be like over at their house whenever like she's touring or something like that. She would stay with like with that family. Anyway, I don't know how we got into the topic of like random celebrity encounters. I think it all started with like the LeBron lives in Akron or used to live in Akron. I once met Richard Thomas, John Boy from the Waltons, at Tower Records in D.C. Yep, Warrant. Thank you, Andrew. Warrant. Uh, Banana, hello from the UK. Would you quarantine frags before going into the main tank? If so, how? Okay, so uh, I would quarantine frags. We quarantine stuff now. For the longest time, we did not, but we do have a new Coral quarantine system, and it's really helpful for a number of reasons. So, obviously, it's a good tool to help prevent pest and disease from coming in. I say help because nothing really is 100%. There's a really good chance that any pest that really wants to get through is probably going to defeat most people's quarantine procedures. Quarantine is a fairly new thing. People can get sloppy, and these organisms are really, really, really good at surviving and getting into your main system, which is also still fine. There's many methods to help control these problems. One of these methods, again, is quarantine. It helps. But to me, the bigger deal is when you have like a new coral come in, you really do want to dip it at some point, okay? But without a quarantine system, how are you going to dip it? You're going to dip it the second it arrives in your care. And when you do that, that's a problem because especially if you've ordered it online, that coral is about as stressed as it's ever going to be in its whole life. And now you're going to further stress it by dipping. A lot of beginners don't understand how stressful the dipping process is, especially the kind of dip that you're using. A lot of times people just straight up are killing their corals just by opening the bag and then dipping it immediately. But if you don't have a quarantine system, you have no method of doing it any other way, other than just putting it in your tank and hoping, which is probably not the best idea, right? So when you do have like a quarantine system, you can put all the frags and stuff, all your new corals, let them breathe for a little while, and then start doing like the dips and the treatments and everything like that. And then you can again take them all out, restart that tank, you completely like wash it out, whatever you need to do, and then dip the corals when they're a little bit more settled in, reintroduce them into quarantine, observe, and then do your whole regimen, whatever that might look like. So there's a lot more flexibility and a lot more options in there. If everybody had a quarantine system, that would be great. But again, I wouldn't expect it to eliminate every problem. I think that might be a little bit optimistic, but it is so much better than 99.9% of everybody else that is not doing it. Because let's be real, less than 1% are doing any kind of quarantine. Less than 1%. This is something that I was talking with Ryan about at BRS. Like, he estimates that like 70% of the people aren't even dipping their corals. So imagine like how few people on top of that are like not doing quarantine. It is probably less than 1%. No, not Pat Benatar, not Lita Ford. What's her name? I gotta look it up now. It's gonna be in my head. Uh, Special. Song by the Pretenders. Who's the lead singer of the Pretenders? Who were in the Pretenders? Original member of the Pretenders. Chrissy Hynde. Yes, Chrissy Hynde. That's her. Yeah, so she's from Akron, I believe, right? Chrissy Hynde. We're looking at Wikipedia here. Yep, born in Akron, Ohio. That's her. Yeah, so whenever like she's on tour and then came to like the Northeast Ohio area, she would very often not get a hotel. She would just stay with my friend, friend's mom. They were like high school friends or something. Anyway, that was an aside. Okay. Cyndi Lauper. I wish. It's like I wish I knew Cyndi Lauper. B. I met a bunch of rappers when I lived in Atlanta. Yes, because you practically lived at the strip club, I bet, and met all the rappers in Atlanta. By the way, B is a friend of mine. We rib each other constantly. So, you just saying. Okay, let's see. Veterans Farming Initiative. I am looking to start a reef tank again. If you had a choice, would you start with a 20 Max Nano, a 40 to 60 gallon with sump, or a 120 to 160 gallon system? I would get a 120 to 160 gallon system. There's a lot of benefits to having something of that size. You have a lot more flexibility in terms of fish, and fish really, really, really help do work in your aquarium. A lot of times those smaller aquariums, you're going to be doing the job that the organisms should have been doing, but you can't have those organisms because that tank is too small. Also, the cost of equipment does not scale linearly. So a lot of like the smaller pieces of equipment, sure, they're cheaper. They're also a million times worse, to the point where a lot of them are practically ineffective. The sort of equipment that goes onto a 120 or 160 is the same sort of equipment that would be going on like a much smaller tank, but it just still works at that size. A lot of benefits. Obviously, it is more room. It's going to be more work just because of the sheer scale of it, but at the same time, there's a lot more you can do with aquascape. There's a lot more you can do with organism choice. That's the direction that I would go. Let's see. David Fenwick, is there any potential of getting you and Dong Zhu from Acro Garden in the same room and on camera? It's a conversation I would love to hear. Apologies, I don't know who that is, so I don't know. Hi, sir. The baking soda idea worked pretty well, adding on with rock powder for aquascape. Nice. Love from India. Yeah. So these days it is getting really easy to do aquascapes that are very, very creative. Like the baking soda and glue idea works. There's also this new product that's on the market called SeaTac. I talked to that company at Aquashella. Interesting product, a lot expensive, but I think it could have its applications. I just got like a small sample tube and we're playing with it. Blight Swine. Hi, Than. Do you have any tips for differentiating pallies and zoas? Kinda. It's very hard to verbalize. So I'll try my best. I would say that almost everything is a zoa, and that there's very few actual Paleothoa. So something that are obviously pallies are Paleothoa grandis, right? You can pick that out of a lineup, no questions asked. Paleothoa grandis. The other like pallies are going to look like purple death and nuclear green. It's that type of shape. or like the Captain America pally, that sort of stuff. There's a lot of zoas that are called pallies, but they're very likely just a large polyp species of zoanthus. And but like the hobby gets really cloudy when it comes to like the common names. There's like red, purple, or like the red people eater pallies, purple people eater pallies. Very likely those are just zoas. So when you kind of like have like a mental idea of the ones that I said are pallies for sure, they don't really look like zoas at all, right? They don't look like a big zoa. They really look like their own thing. Or what is the other ones? Like basically what people call like Texas trash, that type of stuff. Those are pallies. And when it comes to like palitoxin risk, the pallies are way more dangerous than zoas. Zoas still can have palitoxin, but I don't like to touch true paleothoa. Like they freak me out. We have like a wall of it on one of our overflow boxes. I would love to get rid of it, and I don't really know of a good method to do it, and I'm not going to endanger myself or my staff. We just let it be. Okay. Casey Corals, love your videos. Hello from Huntington, Pennsylvania. Thank you, Casey. We got some guesses. Blondie or Joan Jett? No, Chrissy Hine. Ken Ward got it. Yep, because Ken is from Ohio. There you go. Let's see. Bob Purcell, how big do scolies get? About that big. 6 inches at tops. That's the biggest I've seen. But I have a smaller tank. I want to make sure it won't outgrow the tank. It's not gonna. In addition to being like the fact that they don't grow that big, they don't grow that fast. It's not gonna outgrow anything. Let's see. Edge Crusher TWR. Any idea what would cause black patches on the face of zoas? No. Not really, no. Zoa coloration. What really affects zoa coloration? The only thing that really pops to the top of my head is probably it's probably lighting more than anything else. Yeah. Lincoln Towns, any tips on mounting coral? My snails and urchin constantly knocking corals off of their rocks. So what you can try to do is, especially urchins are difficult. Urchins like to like mess up stuff, but you can try to mount the coral to a slightly large piece of rock, and then mount that slightly large piece of rock to your aquascape. So make sure that it's actually attached down nicely to your new substrate. That's slightly like bigger piece, and by slightly bigger piece I'm talking about like 5 inches or so, 4 or 5 inches, and that stuck there is probably not going to be getting knocked down. Let's see. Alex Sulewski. 120 gallon is like the perfect size. Pretty good. It's a pretty good size. Be the Fountain. Actually, no, I couldn't afford their areas. I met them at restaurants like Waffle House and clothing stores. And I also like how 40-gallon breeders work. There is something to be said for having multiple smaller aquariums like 40-gallon breeders rather than having like a single gigantic system. Again, you do miss out on some of the best workers, certain tangs and things like that, fox faces and whatnot. But since we have both, I have noticed that certain corals do really well in just like the smaller tanks, and once you put it into like the larger farming systems, they get bogged down or look weird. But yeah, if you're just gonna get one shot at it, I get like a 120 to 160. Alex, are closed loops worth the money and effort, or should budget hobbyists just stick to using power heads? It really depends on the tank. Really, where closed loops shine is when you have a gigantic aquarium. Because if you, for example, need to move water 10 to 15 feet across the length of a peninsula, and then somehow have that water at the end of that peninsula make it back to the overflow box on the far end, right? Or on the near end from 10, 15 feet away. Yes, you could put a power head way the heck out there on the peninsula glass face that's the viewing pane, but that looks terrible. You see it all the time. People do it. People put like a max spec gyre or something like that on the glass face, pointing all the way back, 10 feet to the overflow box. That max spec gyre is undersized. It's also visible. So what you really need is like an Abyss flow cannon to send, or like maybe like a Seche Voyager 10, like a big power head. It's gonna look gross, right? No matter what it is. Like even if you like the way that like an Abyss AFC 150 looks, it's a giant visible pump. So that's not ideal, right? But if you have like closed loops, you can bury all that in your aquascape. And your intake could be all the way over by your overflow box and have a number of different like spray jets like throughout your aquascape, and not have to worry about like big visible power heads just blocking up the scenery. So it's always application specific. If you have like a 40-gallon tank, you probably don't have a great reason to use a closed loop. I mean, there's still some benefits to using closed loops, like just the accessibility and ease of maintenance of the external pump and things like that. But there's like a very simple beauty in having like a really nice compact power head, like an AI Nero, for example. Like those are really cool pumps. Toby Milo, your setup is absolutely beautiful and meticulous. Thank you very much. I consider myself very lucky that it turned out as well as it did, because in the planning and building of this project, I didn't really realize that I was the general contractor. I thought that the builder was a general contractor, and when I was informed that he was not, and that I'd have to start hiring plumbers and electricians and stuff like that, and start doing all that planning, it's like, yeah, this is gonna go great. So that was effectively another 40-hour-a-week job on top of actually trying to run this business. And then to have it turn out where, like, obviously there's like certain things that aren't 1,000,000% perfect. It's way more perfect than it had any business being. But yeah, no, I'm super happy with how it's coming along. And I am also really happy that for the first time in a long time, most of like the really big projects are over with. The projects that remain are largely polish, and not like, oh, this is preventing a system of tanks. Excuse me. A system of tanks from getting started up. Like all of the tanks that we want are currently running just fine. So there's no like ongoing project that's preventing that from continuing. Andrew, it's been a pleasure. Enjoy your evening. Thanks. You too. You too. Let's see. Hi, Than. Need some of your thoughts today. Been using Radeon Gen 6 Pros. Okay, 50% intensity, 12 inches above the water. Decided to up the intensity to 5%, and got some burnt tips. Any thoughts? That's a little surprising, only because like 5% really isn't that much. 12 inches is actually kind of high also for your Gen 6s, because Gen 6s are more widespread than the 5s or the 4s before them. So you wouldn't expect much different. I mean, I guess like the real way to test is Do you have like a par meter? Because if you can detect like a significant difference in light intensity, again, would not expect that. Would not expect that. Uh, the only other thing I was thinking is, did you like change out your carbon more recently also at the same time? Because if you went from uh, like older carbon that's spent to new carbon that could further strip the water, and you might just get like a lot clearer water, and that plus the additional light boost could be a difference in par enough that you might see some singeing. Did you change anything else chemically? That might be a thing. Hard to say. But on its own, in a vacuum, a 5% increase on those lights at 12 inches, probably not the cause. That wouldn't, yeah, I wouldn't guess that. Janelle Chu, would you think purchasing a 200-gallon 12-year-old tank would be a problem? Uh, Honestly, yeah, I would probably be a little bit worried. So, a 200-gallon tank is a pretty sizable tank. These things don't last forever unless they're built from like day one to be so overbuilt. Like, for example, my tanks at 12 years old, they're going to be fine. But I've built them, I didn't build them, I had them commissioned. Uh, but they're like multi-armored seams. There's like an internal Euro brace. There's an external Euro brace. Everything is double the thickness it needed to be for the size. Like that is gonna last forever, right? It's gonna last. It's gonna outlive me. But like a commercial, regular 200-gallon tank, who knows how well that was made? Who knows what kind of abuse it's taken over the years? Um, at 12 years old, you practically like might want to like have it rebuilt anyway and just like redo the silicone and stuff, and at that point armor it up to be like really indestructible. uh, I would worry if you just wanted to fill it up and hope it works out. Yeah, because like the crazy thing about glass tanks, I'm assuming it's glass by the way. If it's acrylic, might be okay. uh, the crazy thing about glass is like you're holding the whole thing together with just this like little bead of silicone, most of the time. And that's just not a whole lot there. And once you start getting into like all the different like really strong forces that really are pushing against the side of the glass, and especially with like wave controllers now, once you start putting wave action into the tank, that's further stressing that little bit of silicone holding stuff together. Yeah, I would I would worry a little bit, and I would be ready to re-silicone that thing. Let's see. Thanks for your input. I have a curveball for you. What are your thoughts on the efficacy of dosing live Fido into our tanks? Lots of people do it. We do not, mainly because they like when you do live Fido, it really increases phosphate, and that's something that we're not looking to do. But I know a lot of places do it. They like it, and they have like some serious benefits from doing so. And they make their own because it's super easy to grow your own Fido. Also super easy just to like buy it off the shelf, whatever you want to do. But we haven't, because a lot of like other people's systems, they're able to do it because they have impossibly low nitrate and phosphate. Our systems are relatively high in phosphate and nitrate, so when we do want to experiment with something like that, it's going to cause our phosphate levels in particular to skyrocket, and we kind of don't want to do that. I think that if we upped the size of our skimmer, because currently we're using like kind of hobby grade nice reef octopus skimmers, which are really, really, really good for the price point. But if I'm willing to spend 10 times the price, I can get into something like an MRC skimmer. And those things can really crank. And once we are, I guess, towards the upper end of our filtration threshold, I expect like the phosphate and nitrate figures to be much lower, and we would have like the ability to mess with that stuff. Or if we added like algal turf scrubbers or Chaeto reactor type refugium type things, that can also like drastically reduce the nutrient load. But currently we don't really want to experiment with anything like that. But if you did, keep an eye on your nutrients, but I would expect that the corals would really appreciate that. Name says, I bought a few-year-old 55-gallon and stay awake at night wondering how long it will last sometimes. Yeah, it's like that. I mean, I requested my tanks to be overbuilt for specifically that reason. I don't want to think about it. Like, I know that these tanks are there's nothing in the course of a regular day that would cause a tank failure. I mean, unless we're in the process of intentionally demoing a tank, it's not going to leak. Just impossible. Nice. Rob says he got his Reef Savvy aquarium, went with Alufab for my T-slot stand. Nice. Those guys were at Aquashella. This is so wild because when they originally approached me, because it's like I was working with a different company and there was like some little quibbles that I had, and it's not even really that other company's fault. It's just the way that they did stuff, right? So if you had like um, if you had like a a number of tanks or a number of tank stands that you wanted to put together, um, it would be all put in the same packaging. So you didn't know like how many little screws and bits and bobs went to any particular stand because it was all aggregated. So they will, if you order multiple stands, it all comes in like stand kits. So it's all nicely separated, stuff like that. But anyway, they did a thing where it was like they just wanted to start to see what it would look like, and sure enough, like they ended up being like in the industry after that. And so they showed up at Reefapalooza, they showed up at Aquashella. It was great. Okay, let's see, where are we in chat? Does Life Phyto not take up phosphates? Not in my experience. Every single time it's always been like, it's always been the opposite direction. It always has led to its increasing. But you know what? If your experience has been different, great. That has not been mine. Yashiv, hi Than. I've been battling hair algae without progress. My tank runs below 1 parts per million nitrate and 0.01 parts per million phosphate. I've double checked with the LFS. Reducing feeding hasn't helped. What's your advice? I would put in herbivores. And while you're putting in herbivores, I would try as best as I can to also physically remove as much of it as possible with like toothbrush and siphon. So the idea is like the bigger, chunkier, problematic areas to knock all that down with elbow grease and then letting the herbivores get to work. Specifically, the herbivores that are going to do the best job are going to be snails, astrias, turbos, and blanking on the other one. They're turban snails. What are they? The ones that can actually reproduce and actually flip themselves over. Gotta look it up. It's gonna come to me. Trochus snails. So, if you wanted to check out a video, look at on my channel. Look up a video called "The Ugly Phase." Okay, I promise you, whatever you're going through was not as bad as our SPS show tank. That went through like a hellacious hair algae phase, and the reason why I put that video out was because I knew it's not really a problem. Like, this is gonna get beaten, no big deal. And then you can see the progression of that tank to what it is now, where it basically doesn't have any hair algae, and it hasn't had hair algae for a year. But long story short, it's just it's a herbivore issue, and the reason why the elbow grease is nice is because herbivores like to eat freshly grown stuff, not the big, long, hairy pieces. So you take care of the long, big, overgrown stuff, and once you get it kind of under control, and the herbivores can get a foothold and take care of the rest. Okay. Hillbilly Reefer, you may have commented in a previous stream, but talking filtration, I will never run a system without a refugium again. Is a fuge not feasible for your systems? Okay, so there's a couple of things that work. Refugiums will work great for a lot of things, okay? Where it kind of falls apart for me is that it becomes a reservoir for all your problems. So, for example, in a home aquarium, great, not a big deal. But in a commercial farming setting, we need to have more control and an ability to reset stuff. So if we're having like any issue, pest, disease, whatever, we need to be able to like fully break down systems and stuff like that. And oftentimes, if there's a refugium, all those issues just kind of like hang out in the refugium and come back later. So we have to be a little bit more, there has to be a little bit more engineering around the disadvantages of a refugium. Things like, one of the things that we've done is we're playing around with like a Pax Bellum algae reactor. And so we're growing like Chaeto and stuff like that in there. But feeding into that, we're running it through like 80 watts of UV. Just to like try to keep that little thing clean. The other thing would be to set up like tumbling containers, and so like in a pinch you can just take all the algae out of it, scrub that thing down and sterilize it, restart the tumble again. But we haven't done that just yet. But there's like always it's an engineering puzzle, just because commercial systems simply are a different thing entirely than home aquariums. But yeah, there's some benefits to it. But understand that if you have like some nuisance planaria or something like that, the little red flatworms on your glass, chances are with your refugium, they'll be there forever. So, okay, Alex, any tips on transferring livestock and equipment to a new home? I'm planning on a move in a few months, about a 20 to 30 minute drive. Okay, so I went on like a big rant about that earlier in this stream. Long story short, I would strongly consider liquidating everything livestock wise and then moving everything else over. The livestock puts you on a clock, like a countdown, and moving is stressful enough without that. So if at all possible, like sell all your fish and coral and all that stuff, just move everything else over, set it back up. Or if you really, really are married to your fish and coral and inverts and whatnot, set something up already ready to go over there. So once you just drive all the livestock over 20 minutes, 30 minutes, drop it into there. Because like trying to like break down a tank, move it, set it back up, it is horrific. And you're already moving. Like the move itself is stressful. Atkins Nature Aquariums, is lithophilin a chalice or a plate? They're all really common names. They've been considered a chalice for a long time. They're more similar to a plate, I guess. But within chalices, there's about 20 something different genera of corals that are all kind of lumped together. And within plate corals, there's another 20 or so genera of corals that are all kind of lumped together. Lithophyllum for the longest time have been chalices, but yeah, like I said, probably more similar to the other plates that are out there. Okay. How to dose trace elements and fluoride. How to maintain proper levels. Do water changes alone suffice with a good salt mix? Focusing on zoas and anemones. That's a great question. So my rule has always been, if you want to be dosing specific things like trace elements, you really should be testing them. There's not wonderful ways to do these tests short of ICP with the asterisk if you're into that sort of thing, because there's plenty of debate out there that this technology, ICP, mass spec, all that stuff, was really not meant for saltwater samples. It can be mishandled very easily. Your results might not be the most reliable things anyway. Having said that, how reliable is a trace element test kit? Probably not great at the hobbyist level either. By the way, case in point, and this is where I'll get into like why ICP and ICP-MS probably is not the most reliable thing. They're not $50 tests, guys. For pharma, like that test is easily over $200 at the industrial pharma level, and the person that's conducting the test has to be a very skilled technician that really has to know what they're doing to not royally screw up these results. And chances are a person of that talent would not be, like, the pharma industry would throw the bag at that person. Like, they would be making surgeon money. So like, I mean, I've talked to people that have wanted just to buy an ICP machine and just like have it just to be able to run all their tests all the time. And like that machine basically has to be rebuilt all the time. It's like the most finicky thing. If you guys are like struggling with your Neptune tridents, you don't even want to know what like an ICP-MS would take. Like, it's crazy difficult to use. The least user-friendly thing ever. So, okay, to answer your question, like testing is a challenge. I would recommend at least having some kind of like baseline there, right? And as far as will your salt be able to keep up, that depends largely on how many corals you have, what is their uptake, what's the size of those guys, how often are you doing water changes. I mean, if we're talking about like a nano and you're doing what amounts to a 100% water change all the time, like every day, yeah, water changes will do the trick for sure. But if we're talking like hundreds of gallons and you're doing a 10% water change, maybe. It depends on how many like ones of mushrooms you have in your tank, that sort of stuff. Okay, Cannibal Holiday, nice name. It's nice to finally catch an episode after missing a bunch. Well, welcome, Cannibal. Ernie Wallace, why not an algae scrubber? Why not indeed? We have one algae scrubber unit. We're still collecting data. It's nice. Yeah, we got one of the clear water ones. As of today, what is your favorite of all-time coral? If it was a gun to the head, name your favorite coral right this second. It is an amazeballs Goniopora. I've been liking Gonies a lot lately. That is probably my favorite amongst the Gonies. Okay, real quick, y'all. We're about halfway through, I would say. We're about an hour into the show. So I want to say my thank yous and stuff. So first off, thank you very much to Ecotech Marine. and Polyp Lab. They are the corporate sponsors of the Tidal Gardens YouTube channel. And then, by the way, I want to do collabs with both of them. Like at some point I want to visit the Ecotech facility because they're really just one state over, but they're on the wrong side of the state. So they're like a 6-hour drive or something. And I want to visit Polyp Lab, and Polyp Lab is in Montreal. So that's a little bit further away still. But again, I'd like to see those guys, maybe record some video and stuff and see where that goes. Next up, thank you to you guys for your support. And let's start with, again, the YouTube members. Okay, so these guys actually pay money, right? Keith Holland, Cvin13, JB Bryan, Terry Kuhn, Stories Reef, Herb777, Justin Harden, and 328 Reef. And on the Patreon side, thank you very much to Angela Sherman, Big Lord Chi, Brandy Camp, who's in chat right now, Be the Fountain, Harkins Aquatics, Jeremy Altman, aka 2 Please, Scott Williams, Elaine Martinassi, Alan Jackson, Ann Lewis, Chuck Admire, D Rose, Greg Bauer, Greg Zimmerman, Jordan Marty, Keith Singer, Kyle Jameson, Lisa Clow, Lacry Fine Art, who I saw in Dallas. Very nice to see Lisa again. Lynn Holt, Michael Shelley, Puddle Aquatics, Reef Infidel, Ryan Baker, Sheila. I'm just gonna say it all. She's a new patron, and I'm like, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. I'm sorry. Skylar Korn, Sue Hemmons, Thomas Tarrant, and Tim Garner. So thank you all very much. Okay. Ellery, thank you, Than, for your awesome videos throughout the years. Thank you for watching them. I do need to find a way to make more of them, because I was talking to March from Fragbox Coral, who visited yesterday, and he was like, yeah, I make 3 videos a week, and I'm like, I'm lucky to make 3 videos a month. So I need just to crank out more footage, crank out more work product. Okay, I'm gonna check something here real quick. See something here. Okay. So, trying to think of like all the stuff that's going to be going on here coming up. You know, one of the things that that people don't like fully appreciate about a facility like this is the amount of just regular maintenance it takes to keep stuff running. For the first time like ever, we're doing our RO system, because at one point we royally screwed it up because we made the wrong mix of chlorine. Okay, so starting from the very beginning, this building collects rainwater. We store the rainwater underground in concrete cisterns. There's a 10,000 gallon concrete cistern. Might be expanded in the future. Don't know. We've been talking with the plumber for 3 years about it. Okay? Don't know. We'd like to. But anyway. So we store it underground in 10,000 gallon cisterns. We bring it into this building, and you have to disinfect that water with chlorine, because bacteria grows in that water, and bacteria will eat your RO membrane. So you have to chlorinate it and then dechlorinate it. But the chlorine part of it, every single time that unit runs, we really should be doing a chlorine test at 3 different areas. There's different spouts. Like after this stage, test it. After this stage, test it. And after this stage, test it, to show that, like, okay, the chlorine is at a therapeutically high level here. It is at a low enough level here before it gets to the RO, and after it goes through the RO, it is 0. Okay. So we royally screwed it up, and we weren't testing for chlorine. And so what happened is we completely nuked the dechlorination stage, which is like a big carbon stage, and we completely nuked the RO membrane. And this was like at least a year ago that this happened. So finally, we're like, okay, we need to actually do a service on this thing because, we might have like severely impacted the performance and efficacy of this RO system. So first off, we're just assuming that the RO membrane is like screwed, but that's on order. That has to like get here, then they can swap out the membranes because it's like a 3,000 gallon per day professional system, right? So nobody just stocks that. That's on order. But the carbon stage, we had to get that rebedded, and the guys that had to like take out the old carbon and put in the new carbon and flush it, they said they've never seen carbon look like that before, because when they emptied out the carbon stage, it came out blonde, not black. It was blonde colored. So yeah, I think we zapped it pretty hard with chlorine. What do you guys think? No. Anyway, that was a fun little thing that we did. So once that is all handled and we get the new RO membranes in place, I will be a lot more confident about our water quality before it gets turned into salt water. Oh man. Okay. Edge Crusher is asking, Mitras, which are, that's a German fixture by the GHL, I think, or XR30s. Any opinion? I've never used the Mitras, but I have used XR30s. At that price point, I think literally any light is gonna be like just great. Like they're all gonna be slightly different in like how you go about controlling them and how easy their app is to use and whatnot. But and maybe like there's like a difference in like the hanging fixture perhaps. But any and all of those lights are going to be able to grow coral and color them up just fine. Like we're not talking about some super cheap like random Amazon light, which by the way, most of those work too. But amongst like the premium light segment, I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. March is crazy and fun to watch. Jake is gone. You are the new master. I was always the master. Let's get that clear. No, Jake was a huge deal in the industry, like clearly, right? And it is a shame. Like the thing I'm gonna miss most about Jake is that we really didn't get to talk nearly that much. And it's the people that have been in the industry like forever, been in the hobby forever, and really been about the hobby. Like there's a lot of people that have been in the business a long time, but at their core they're like business guys, right? They're doing stuff purely to make money, and there's not anything wrong with that. But the person I want to talk to is like the hardest core hobbyists. Somebody like Patrick from Reef Wholesale, he knows a ton about stuff, right? Because he's seen all the stuff that could possibly go wrong. And so I pick his brain about fish quarantine. And I'm a bad listener because it's like he tells me stuff. I'm like, there's no way that I could ever do that here. But going back to Jake, like he would just be able to like identify some random issues that I have just by talking about my systems generally, because there's an understanding there. It's like the problem that I'm having, this isn't a beginner issue, so my problem isn't my alkalinity, right? It's like, no, obviously that type of stuff is going to be covered. It's like, not to toot your own horn, but it's like you're talking to Tidal Gardens. Tidal Gardens isn't going to like not know how to like control the alkalinity of a tank, right? No, it's going to be some exotic weird stuff. And in order for you to have any idea what the exotic weird stuff is, you need to have seen those 1 in 1,000 cases. And that only happens when you're like, you've been in it forever and seen everything. So there's this thing online that happens where people are too afraid to show when things go wrong because they get dogpiled on by what really amounts to know nothing noobs in the hobby. Okay? Case in point, like if you were here when we were talking about the hair algae thing, there's a lot of people that when I posted my video about the SPS show tank and the ugly phase of hair algae, right? There's a lot of people that came out of the woodwork to like talk about how horrible I am as a hobbyist, right? And it was kind of bait, to be perfectly honest, right? That was noob bait. Because anybody that's been in this hobby before, they don't care about that as an issue, like that type of hair algae as an issue. It looks terrible. But the people that know that like I couldn't even keep that up if I wanted to. That problem's gonna go away. I'm gonna do something to make it go away really, really fast. But that problem, even in and of itself, is not sustainable. Like that's how ridiculously not an issue that was. But the noobs all come out. So there is this sentiment that like that people don't want to show whenever they've had problems because they get bullied. And then there's this like this worse line of thinking where if I have not had a certain problem, that means I am better at this hobby than somebody that has had that problem. And that is not how this hobby works at all. Okay, let me tell you. So it's the people that say, I've never had a tank crash because I'm good. No, you're incredibly inexperienced and naive. Like, you really want to talk to the people that have seen and gone through the freak horror shows of everything and seen those 1 in 1,000 cases that were like ultra perplexing. And it's something like, yeah, there is a random part that should have been all plastic, but it wasn't, and it's leaking copper into your tank. That type of stuff. And going back to Jake, he's the type of guy that can pinpoint that type of stuff. There's only a handful of those type of guys in the entire industry that's at all accessible. And so that is like my biggest like regret is I wasn't ever really able to just to sit and have a lot of conversations with him. Like, we didn't get along for a long time. That's like also a common thing with Jake, right? It's like he has a lot of friends and they weren't always his friends. It's like it's always like an on-off thing. So I'm not going to pretend like we were like best buds. We were friends at the end. There's a long stretch where we didn't like each other. And again, it's because, we're not always the coolest people to be around, turns out. But as far as like just hardcore knowledge, top tier. Absolutely top tier. And I'm going to miss him terribly for that. Because, yeah, that is like truly, truly rare. Okay. That was an aside now, wasn't it? That was an aside. By the way, Jake's widow, Windsor, is due any day now. So there might be a little Jake Adams frag running around in no time. Let's see. Danny. So, sorry, gonna get caught up on chat real quick. I've got a glitter bomb Ghani I'm trying to rescue from an LFS. Any advice? It's a small frag. I can see 2 to 3 polyps are dead where the skeleton is white. Ugh. Should I cut it that way or leave it be? That's tough. See, because I think at that point you're talking about possible bacteria issues if you mess with it too much. Yeah, that's a toughie. It's one of those situations where leaving it alone might be all right. But if it's not all right, then you should have done something. But if you do something proactively, that in and of itself might be the cause of its downfall. If there's polyps and white skeleton, that means it is currently in the process of dying. So you might have to step in there with some degree of cutting and antibiotics. That's tough. That's tricky. That's tricky. I'd probably do that though. I'd probably cut with antibiotics. Dan, what is your favorite place in the United States? Hawaii. And not that close. Not that close. Uh, I've only been there like a handful of times. I've never wanted to leave Hawaii. It's so nice there. I love the food. I love the weather. Love the ocean. Yeah, it's like if I was like fabulously wealthy and didn't have to work, that would definitely be on the short list of places I would like to be in the U.S. Tattoo Dancer 91. I couldn't keep it growing if I wanted to. So true. Yeah. At some point, those algae patches can be rubbed off the rocks easily. Yep, pretty much. Yeah, Ellery. Jake is just very passionate about this hobby and has strong opinions, but that's good to have debates to vet out information. So it was okay. I'll give you a little funny anecdote, right? So because like there's always strong opinions in this hobby, but one of my guys was like talking about like how amazing and smart Jake is, and I'd be like, I bet I can give you like a hot take that Jake had that will immediately make you change your mind. And it's like Jake does not use RO water to make salt water. And so it's funny because like my the guy that works for me, the staff member, is so paranoid about like getting RO water down to 0 TDS. Otherwise, it's just not right. Like our RO water right now is probably like 15 TDS, and he's like, but you don't know what those 15 TDS are. It's like I'm pretty sure it's sodium specifically. But anyway, um, so he's like, like, oh, it's like super fixated on like 0 TDS water to start your salt mix, and I'm like, your boy Jake Adams doesn't even use RO. He just goes straight tap water into the salt mixing station. So yeah, but it is these yeah, it's the hobby, guys. It's part of the hobby. You're going to have like these discrepancies and stuff like that. Oops, sorry, bumped the mic. And you're gonna have like really loud voices talking about different methodologies. And guys, I can't stress this enough. You need to figure out what's gonna work for you. Just because such and such at so and so's coral farm says so does not mean that it's going to work in your aquarium. There's been like some information that's being like repeated over and over and over online that recommendation is borderline madness. We were talking about this yesterday with the Canadian guys, March and Patrick, specifically about like the administering of a certain type of thing to help boost your alkalinity or something. And one of like the techniques that's like getting discussed clearly isn't getting discussed by people that have used that particular method because it is so ridiculously reckless. And there's so many ways to do this safely, but what is actually being discussed is reckless as all hell. And turns out one of like my friends in the UK, she has like a coral farm of her own. Like she thinks very highly of certain online voices and tried this. And I think that she lost a 2,000-gallon coral system, killed all the fish and everything. And it's like, yeah, don't listen to online people. It's like you're a successful coral farmer as is. Like trust your own technique. Don't listen to yeah. Anyway, she had a bad experience. Let's just say. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Just because they're loud voices, like you haven't seen their tanks even. Like you're just absorbing like just online influence, and that goes for me too. By the way, like just because I say something, like critical thinking here, right? A lot of what will work for me in a commercial setting might be either A, overkill for you, or just not fit the way that you're going to do this hobby. You have to like stay really malleable when it comes to this. It is by nature a hobby. You have to fiddle. Okay, Gary Venegas. Venejas? I don't know. Sorry to be butchering your name too, Gary. I heard bumblebee snails will eat other snails. Yes, they do. Is there a safe way to have them without them attacking the other snails in the tank, like making sure they're smaller than the other mates? No. If they decide to start attacking other snails, oftentimes those other snails are on their way out anyway. Like they're borderline starving, possibly. Um, and it does not matter the size. The smaller bumblebee snails can take down a snail that is 10 times their size very easily. But at the same time, they'll go for like a long time, not bothering anything. It's almost like, oh, that snail like flipped over and is almost dead. I'm going to eat him. Like that happens. Um, Also, we started to feed like fresh clams from the grocery store to copper bands to kind of get them to eat. And great oogly boogly do those bumblebee snails like to eat fresh clams. Like we put it out for the copper bands. He takes like a couple nibbles. The next day, that clamshell is like only bumblebee snail. So there's that. If you, I guess keep them all fed, and they'll be less persnickety when it comes to your other snails. But yes, they absolutely are in the business of eating snails, and they'll do it really well. Recognize. I time my maintenance around these live streams so I can listen while I work on my tank. My tank would look a lot better if there were more live streams. Yeah, that's hilarious. You know what? For the first time ever, we actually planned out the rest of the year. We made a schedule, and you can check now to see all the future live streams that we will be doing in this format. So check that out. Ernie Wallace, +1 on Hawaii. Yeah. Like, I bet there's like a bunch of other places that I would just love also. But of the places that I've been, Hawaii is way up there. Close second? No, it's just second in general. I think that Colorado is absolutely stunning. Um, I think I would actually like Wyoming. But at some point, it gets to be a little bit no civilization-y, and then I would struggle. Like I never thought that I would like the mountains as much as I do, but the more I don't know what happened. Maybe I just got older. But I was visiting some people in Colorado, Jake being one of them, and yeah, like the mountains are so cool, especially in like Aspen and like places around there. I'm like, I get it. I get it. And too bad like I was so late to this party, because like in the 80s these properties would have been like pennies, and now they're like millions of dollars. It's like the word got out. It turns out Aspen, Colorado is really nice. Turns out Telluride is really nice. And if you want nice views, it's there. But like Wyoming, I think people are sleeping big time on Wyoming. Sorry to my Wyoming viewers, but yeah, rich people are coming. I mean, like Grand Teton National Park is like gorgeous. What's the place in Wyoming that's like very popular and crazy expensive? So I think the rich people have already found it, but there's like a lot of real estate in Wyoming that's like kind of not fully developed and could be very nice. So places like that I think are very cool. I've never been to Montana, otherwise I'd probably say Montana also. B, I never do what you say, Than. Yeah, clearly. Clearly. Let's see. Oh, sorry, I missed a couple of other ones. A couple of other comments. I just like gravitated right to the blue name. Dell's Reef. Hi, Than. Just got my innovative Marine 150 set up. Can't wait to fill it with coral, saving my pennies for the next live sale. Love all you do. Thanks. Thanks, Dells. I appreciate your viewing, and I hope your setup goes well. And I would love to sell you some coral. Trust me. Need to get that cash. Let's see. You should do a live stream of your facility. Yeah, I should. I do it sometimes with like a phone, but it's just not the same. It's not the same. In general, I need to get off my butt and really do like a building update because there's just a lot of cool stuff to show you. Small stuff, but cool. Atkins, I set up my RODI filter. Incoming TDS is 28. That's basically clean. And out the membrane is 0 going into the DI stage. Do I even need a DI stage? No, you don't. Really, you basically don't. You probably didn't need the RO to begin with. 28 TDS, it's super clean. Our incoming TDS is like 900 if it's coming from the well. 100 and something if it's coming from rain. There you go. Anton, do you prefer white or light or blue or light? You know, I think there's certain corals that can be appreciated under both. And there's a great argument for both. Like white or light, if you like fish, blue light sucks. Straight up sucks. Like white light is what you want to see your fish under. It's so much better. But under the bluer light, there's certain corals that just look amazing, and blue light hides all the problematic junk that's on your rocks. You know, just speaking from experience, perhaps. So, in a perfect world, if I had like a personal show tank that I actually cared about, I would do like a good length of time white light during some viewing time, but then have the bluer lights into the evening. And the nice thing about like LEDs is you can just control all this stuff very, very easily. But I tend to like both for very, very different reasons. I don't want like a super blue thing all the time, but yeah, and there's some corals that never look good under white light. So kind of depends on what you have, I guess. Both will work. Both will work. Oh boy, I'm gonna mess up your name. Levent. Hello, thanks for the information. I'm just going from freshwater to saltwater. I want to start with a nano aquarium. 40, 40, 40, I'm guessing centimeters with a back sump. I want to gain experience with soft corals. Cool. If my corals are happy, then maybe add some LPS. Do you think I should buy PS? Question mark. Don't know what that is. Protein skimmer? If so, yeah, probably. I think I'll probably throw 4 or 5 fish in it. Depends on the fish. Like you really want to be conservative when it comes to your fish selection. A lot of fish can overgrow a nano aquarium very, very quickly. Mad Kicks, any advice on dealing with remitted snails? I just did a video on it. You should check it out. They don't appear to be bothering anything, but they're spreading like wildfire. Yes, definitely check out my recent video, Mad Kicks on remitted snails. I go over like 5 different things you can do about the problem, and I think that you might find it helpful. Let's see. Yeah, sheesh. My incoming TDS is 170. 170 is pretty good. Like back when I first started into the hobby, I did not use an RO system. Back then, nobody did. And the Akron City water was 250 TDS, and it was fine. A lot of it does depend on what that TDS is. If the TDS is made of like mostly sodium and calcium, who cares, right? If it's made of like cyanide, not great. So there you go. JG, do you use UVB while growing any corals? No. Or metal halides? No, we don't. It's been a long time since I've used metal halides. I like the light personally, metal halides, but that is a technology that is kind of getting edged out. There's some speculation that it's just not going to be a well-supported technology going forward, even if it has like some good benefits. As far as like UVB, all the research that I've ever seen regarding UVB is that it is really bad for pretty much everything. Like nothing grew better because of UVB. Like it kind of mostly got killed. And it's also kind of dangerous for you. It's not great. But there, there's like certain things that I wonder because there's certain like corals and anemones that have bacterial issues in home aquariums, and this is like pure like, anecdotal speculation. But for example, like so there's certain anemones that are kind of known for having bacteria problems, and so the generally accepted husbandry thing is like when you bring them in, you put them in quarantine, and you nuke the hell out of them with antibiotics, right? In the wild, though, like I've literally seen these anemones, and like during low tide, they're fully exposed to air. Like they're dry. They're dry for like hours, and during that time, they're getting like tropical level direct sunlight. So they're getting like 5,000 par or whatever the heck, and it's sunlight. There's a lot of UV. So I'm wondering if like the UV, while it's obviously not great just to bake these poor dry anemones, is also disinfecting anything that might have been going on. And so when the tide comes back in, like they don't have any kind of like bacteria issues. So like that type of stuff kind of has me curious. Would I be going out of my way to add UV? Personally, no. Atkins Nature Aquariums. I was using my tap water for 2 years in my saltwater tanks. Had carbon blocks, but some of the LPS and SPS just seem pissy for some reason. I'm ruling out possibilities. And that is a really good way to approach it. Like, there is something to be said about being able to eliminate problems or eliminate sources of problems. When I had like my heavy metal issues and stuff like that, it was really nice to go through and be like, okay, well, I know it's not this. And you start from like your source water and you go all the way through everything else. So it is good. That's a good way to look at it. So real quick, a $10 super chat. Lord Thornton Eddington. Nice. Fan, you're my #1 vendor now, mostly because of your excellent education. Do you know why some of my Acan and Musas are shriveled up at 100 par while my other is fine? Okay. Going back to the whole thing about antibiotics. Acans and micromusa are highly susceptible. Now, like, this is something that I wish I knew months ago, but we were struggling with acans and micromusa and blastos also. I know you didn't ask about blastomusa, but that's another one that can get tricky when it comes to like microbial issues. And once we blasted everything with antibiotics, all of those corals got better. It was very noticeable because this was going on like for like a good long time with us, and we're like side-eyeing it. I was like, I wonder what the heck. We've done a couple of dips here and there. It's like, well, obviously it wasn't like a pest issue. Then we started to do like antibiotic dips with like iodine. I was like, that's not quite doing it yet. Let's just nuke the entire system with Cipro. And sure enough, that did it. Like day and night now. Like it went from, boy, which one's gonna like fail next, to now I don't expect any of them to fail. Big difference. So if your acans and micromusa are like that shriveled up, it's probably not a lighting thing. It's probably an infection thing. And thank you very much for the super chat. That's like my first super chat like in like 6 months or something. It's been a while. Like, so there's some streams that are like very super chat rich. That ain't me. So I appreciate you. Okay. Let's see. Marconi Yembao. Can you talk about placement of corals? Let's see. I just started and I feel like I'm overcrowding my corals. I have a 10-gallon tank and a 40 small frags. Okay. Chances are you're probably overcrowding your tank. It's a super duper loaded question when it comes to placement of corals. In one sense, it does, like, placement does matter. you want to give corals as much room from one another as possible. They're You don't want to aggressively smash them with flow from a water pump, stuff like that. You don't want to have low light corals towards the top of the aquascape getting singed by your lights, that sort of thing. But if we're talking about like minute changes in location, that type of stuff is less impactful, especially considering smaller tanks. But yeah, that's something you just have to play with and just kind of like pay attention to the corals. And if something is looking bad, you have to move it. So check with your local water report or send off a free test kit from Home Depot. I'm in Eastern Washington State. So if you want to test your water, okay, um, so again, it depends on how much you want to buy into to like the lab testing that gets done. But it is a good idea to send it off to like an ICP company just to have like some baseline data. Okay, I wouldn't necessarily make like a lot of decision making based on that. Just, pump your brakes on that. But it is a data point. It is valuable. And also, this is something that might be helpful for like local clubs. Okay, if all of you guys are on the same water supply and one of you guys sends it off for a test and another one of you guys sends a thing off to a test, it's nice to like share that kind of information, right? There should be a database for that where it's like a region specific TDS, or not just TDS, but like ICP readings from like, hey, I live in such and such zip code, from this water supply. What was the latest ICP that got sent out by a fellow hobbyist? That sort of thing, right? That'd be kind of a nice thing to know. Do everybody a solid. Okay. Let's see. Ernie Wallace, $10. Ernie, you are already a supporter, right? I believe you sound very familiar. I definitely remember saying your name on these things, right? Either Patreon or YouTube member. Thanks so much. $10 super chat. Thanks for sharing all your experience. No, I appreciate it, Ernie. Let's see. Where have I seen? Which list are you on? I'm sure you used to be on these lists, right? I am so lost. I will look it up later, I guess. But thank you once again. Okay, Mark Shelton. In regard to your rainwater collection, not so fun fact. Most homeowners in Colorado are allowed a maximum of 2 rain barrels with a combined storage of 110 gallons or less at each household. Funny you mention that, okay? So, this facility is kind of a lot of stuff going on, right? It's kind of, there's a lot of electrical stuff. Like we have like a commercial electrical service coming in here because we're running like 400 amp 3-phase that had to get tunneled in from the street, sort of thing, 500 feet back to this facility with its own big transformer and all that fun stuff. It has a commercial sized natural gas line, like the kind that can blow up my whole zip code. That's coming to this building. It's a lot. Okay, I didn't need any permits for any of this stuff because we have this weird residential agricultural hybrid property. It's called residential. It's R3 though. So R1 is like your typical single family home. R2 is something else. And R3 is like this residential agricultural hybrid. So I can apply for agricultural exemptions to build buildings and stuff. And there's like some little weird rules in there about how like I can grow stuff that's grown on this property on a stand at the street. So they're expecting like pears. But technically I could grow blastomusa and sell it at the street, right? So one thing that comes with that is that there's like no agricultural building oversight. You can build whatever the heck you want. So as long as like you like put like a building plan and you apply for an agricultural exemption, you can just get greenlit on all kinds of stuff. So I got greenlit on this building. No need for electrical inspections, no need for plumbing inspections. We did get these inspections done, but it is purely like an elective thing, just to make sure that like your contractor didn't wire up your building in such a way that it would catch fire. But it's not required by the city, right? Or the county. The only thing that gave us pushback was rainwater collection. Of all the things, like they didn't care about the commercial gas, they didn't care about the commercial electric, they didn't care about all this other stuff that we were doing. The local authorities threw the biggest stink about us collecting rainwater, and yeah. So I had to like sign all these documents that said like we will never use this water for drinking water, because that's what they were concerned about apparently. Like you can't drink rainwater, especially after it's been after you send it through like a $100,000 like bespoke RO system. Cool, good to know. But yeah, so Colorado, that doesn't surprise me. I don't know what it is, but like people are squirrely about collecting rain and doing stuff with it. I don't get it. JG with a $20 super chat. I should just bring up the fact that I don't usually get super chats more often, you guys. Thank you for the $20 super chat. What size was your first coral tank? What size do you recommend for new hobbyists? Okay, my first coral tank was a 10-gallon tank, and I recommend something much bigger now. I recommend, if you can fit it, something in the ballpark of 120. There's a lot of like structural advantages to starting with something bigger, mainly because a lot of the fish and stuff like that require larger tanks do a lot of positive things for your tank. A lot of the equipment scales really nicely once you get to that size. In tanks that are really small, a lot of that equipment, frankly, is just hot trash that's probably not even really that functional. Once you get to about 100 gallons or so, that equipment, again, usually is of like a much better quality and actually works. So like protein skimmers and stuff like that. If you have a tiny itty bitty protein skimmer on a tiny tank, you were probably better off not getting that tiny little protein skimmer and just doing more water changes, like that sort of stuff. But once you get into that slightly bigger tank, it does a lot of good for you. If you do intend to have a much smaller aquarium, it's fine. People make it work all the time. I would leverage hard your water change regimen. It'll save you a lot in terms of equipment, and it'll do the most good for you for the amount of like cost and effort that it's going to take. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Ernie. I was on Patreon. Okay, I had a hard right a while back. Oh, that sucks. Getting back into it. No, again, appreciate it. Matthew Owen. I got my 440-gallon tank made from Karen at Exotic Aquariums. The fertilizer in Phyto. Are those two related thoughts? So the 440-gallon made by Exotic Aquariums, very cool. So they are located in Miami, and they made all the aquariums for like Worldwide Coral, and they made 5 aquariums for us. So yeah, very nice. Like, once you get into like that price point of custom aquarium, they're all pretty good. I'll say that they're all pretty good. You can't really go wrong. They're all pretty good. They're very nice to work with. They've been doing like the custom aquarium thing for a very long time. Be the fountain. Thank you, JG. People are being super generous today. I know, right? I know. Thank you, guys. Atkins Nature Aquarium. My first coral tank is 10 gallons too. I'm still running it with just a toadstool, cabbage, and Kenya tree, GSP, Anthelia, and Xenia. It's super simple and easy tank. One thing that I will say, okay, is that back when I had like that little 10-gallon, this is, guys, I was like under 10 years old probably. I was like really young when I had this 10-gallon tank. This is before I knew what a protein skimmer was even. But I would have like just like a power filter. And by the way, back then like coral was literally just coral. It wasn't these are zoas, these are leather coral. It was like, here's a rock of coral. And it just happened to be zoas. And they were brown. But what was interesting was like the water flow in my little tiny 10-gallon aquarium would just kind of like gently loop around and go across like the big U shape across the front of the aquarium. And when I fed like, just some frozen food, I would notice that like, oh, like it gently gets swept across the zoas and they all kind of closed up and then they were super healthy and happy. And that was like my first experience feeding coral. And then I screwed up. I got a 20-gallon tank, which is just an extra tall 10-gallon tank. It was like two 10-gallons stacked on top of each other. And the flow changed because of like, the different aquascape. And so when I fed, it didn't gently get blown by the zoas. And so over time, they kind of just shrunk and didn't look as happy. So yeah, I think that like sometimes when you have like a smaller aquarium, when you do feed, the corals that you do select have a much easier time like getting nutrition. And back then they needed nutrition because there's no like good reef lighting back then. Like for like a starting hobbyist at your local fish store, like back then they just didn't have metal halides. Like they didn't know about VHOs. They just had crappy regular output fluorescence, and that's just how it was. So they weren't getting enough light, so the feeding was necessary. And that actually doubly made it worse when I got like a taller 20-gallon aquarium, because now they're getting way less light and not enough food. So things you learn when you're starting, I guess. But yeah, I think it's cool that you're going with like a lot more of the soft corals. Soft corals, for whatever reason, haven't been popular in ages, but that is one type of show tank that I might just decide to do here. Just like a really big leather and soft coral tank, because they can be really, really cool on their own. They can be very, very like white colored, like daylight colored, rather than actinic. And I think sometimes it'd be nice to have that here, because all of our tanks right now are very blue. But yeah, like a very a very bright colored daylight tank full of leather corals. Oh, look at this! I got spam text. They want to help me earn $1,000 to $10,000 a day with Bitcoin. Thanks. I'll have to block them later. Let's see. Some of my unhappy acans looked like that icy hot. I missed it. Not sure. Not sure. I'm trying to remember what it looked like. So some of our corals that are on this thing might look shrunken if they were grabbed more recently, if that makes sense, because we relocate them to get shot here, and some of them might not always be as open. But I do know that like all of ours, since getting treated with Cipro, have like really bounced back. Let's see. Recognize. The remember Power Compacts, the most horrible light to ever enter the hobby. You know what? I had a lot of success with Power Compacts, but that was like a very short, like a 5 to 10 year stint where they were even popular. Okay, so Jason L is asking. I don't know. I just nose got all stuffy. All of my acropore in my tank was growing fast with good polyp extension, except just one that started to slowly retract for a month. How would you approach this issue? I would take that colony that's struggling and dip it to make sure there isn't a pest on it. That's what I would do. Um, Usually, if something is like looking suspicious, I get very proactive on that. Because if it's something like acro eating flatworms, you don't want that spreading. Oh man, I'm just like having like an allergy outbreak suddenly. Like what the heck? Let's see. Aqua Garden Zen. In my search for books on corals at different local bookstores and old bookstores, I found some old black and white books and some old books they basically call corals simple names. Yeah, I remember like seeing like an old encyclopedia and then I just looked up corals in the encyclopedia. It's like it's a good thing we have ChatGPT now. Lord Thornton Eddington. Is Cipro dosing a display tank an option? Yes, it is. We did it for every drop of water in this entire building. Yes. It is a display tank option, which is kind of cool. Do plenty of your own research on it. There's a lot of ways to do it. For example, you do it and then like afterwards you want to like replenish your bacterial population, so just like have that on hand, like Fritz Turbostard or like Acrobacter. That's going in the wrong direction. What's the one by Brightwell? Nitrobacter 7. It's their bacteria product. There's like a bunch of them, right? They're all possibly slightly different. We bought literally all of them, and we slowly dosed our tanks that stuff after we did our after the antibiotic treatment. Let's see. Soft corals are definitely underrated right now. That's why I like having two tanks, one for stony and one for softies. Yeah, and I guess that is the benefit to having like multiple smaller aquariums is that you can like commit to certain design philosophies. Like we have a tall tank right now that we're kind of using to grow Aptasia, to do nudibranch farming. It's it's okay. Not okay enough that we're going to continue doing it. So once this one batch of Aptasia eating nudibranchs gets like done, and we sell off all those and give away or whatever, and we're done with the Aptasia thing for a while. I think that in such a tall display tank, we might do a whole thing with just like sea fans or something like that because they grow taller. So having like the ability to do a lot of those things is kind of refreshing. So it doesn't always have to be a mixed reef that has every one of your corals in it. You can kind of make some more deliberate design choices. Microbacter 7, thanks. So Jason, it's kind of hard for me since that acro is hard and crusted on the rock. So would you recommend to still take it out and dip it, or are there any alternatives here? Okay, so Jason, there's another alternative. You fill up so I don't know how big your tank is, but fill up like a 5 gallon bucket of water of like RO. Okay, get it roughly to temperature, and then you just I'll stick a little pump in there, like a little power head with a little airline tubing, and just have like a water jet of just pure RO water and blow that RO water onto that colony for a little while and see if anything jumps off of it. So I learned that from Polo Reef as well as Long Island Aquarium, okay? Because in their giant aquariums, it's kind of a pain in the butt when they have flatworms. And hate to break it to you, when you have big tanks, you get acro eating flatworms. Period. End of story. Quarantine all you want, you'll end up with them. Anyway, so they have flatworms, but like the guy from Long Island Aquarium, Joe Yaulo. So he's like the curator of that 20,000 gallon reef tank there, right? Gorgeous tank. He was like, okay, I need to have a technique available to me that I can actually do, because taking out all the acros and dipping them ain't a thing, right? It's not gonna work. So he came up with this freshwater hose method. He hoses down these acros. The flatworms fly off of it. The fish eat up all the flatworms. And so he was saying, like, if he's able to do this like once a month or something like that, the problem is basically controlled. So we've just done it like a couple of times here, and it seems to work. We're still playing around with like how much water, how long do you hold it onto the coral, that sort of thing, right? But it is a technique that you can try to like large established colonies, is like the RO hose down method. And you do this with your flow on. So as soon as the water hits it, the fresh water hits it, it gets washed away. And it's like no harm, no foul, except to the flatworms. So that's like the type of stuff. And even if you do find a technique that works for you, check the ones that aren't even looking bad. It turns out that a lot of acros can be completely asymptomatic until it's too late. And then at that point, they're just covered in flatworms. So give that a try. Danny Hollis. So after you suggested antibiotics, I went down a crazy rabbit hole and now I'm back. How on earth do I go about getting Cipro or amoxicillin? Is there an antibiotic dip product? I literally just bought it online, like Cipro, and there's another thing that people use in place of Cipro called oxalinic acid, which is used in the koi pond industry. Which is an antibiotic of some sort. You can look for that. That can be bought on like Amazon. I have not used oxalinic acid, but other folks, again, just don't take anybody's word for it that you hear on the internet. But there's some internet voices that are saying oxalinic acid is something that works for them. Do your own research. Try it on like a small sister, something, before you gas attack your main display. But Cipro did work for us. Mike Paletta recently did a thing where he did like a 5x concentrated dose of Cipro and had very good results. Again, use it as a data point, do some research. But now, like, I think all of our new incoming corals, I want to blast with like a very heavy antibiotic treatment before it gets into our systems. Having said all that, supposedly you can reintroduce all of this bad bacteria by frozen food. We use a lot of frozen food, so this antibacterial thing that we do might be a once a year thing. And I don't mind. Cipro's cheap, and so far we've just had really, really good results with it. Sea fans and non-photosynthetic coral would be a dope display. Yes, it would. Highly challenging. Very expert only, but yes, it would look wonderful. Jason Larawon. It works for giant tank because you can have all the acropore eating flatworm predators. Yeah, but surprisingly, they were saying how for some reason acro eating flatworms are like fish crack. Like a lot of different fish like to eat it. So there's that. Okay, guys, it looks like we've started back over from the beginning. So I gotta say thank you all for hanging out with me. Thanks for all the super chats. That's JG Ernie Wallace, who, by the way, resubbed on Patreon. Thanks, Ernie. and Lord Thornton Eddington. And of course, the corporate sponsors Ecotech Marine and Polyblab. And yeah, and thanks you guys for like sticking around, hanging out, buying coral, all that fun stuff. Until next time, by the way, next time, the entire schedule is now available. So all of those events are already made. You can like sign up for notifications for all those in the future. For all of you guys that did purchase corals, thank you guys very much. We will be contacting you probably sometime tomorrow afternoon. Set up all the different scheduling for shipments. Most of you guys have been going out like Tuesday for delivery Wednesday because it's a federal holiday Monday. But yeah, if you need a specific day, reach out to us, let us know. And if you for some reason had paid for shipping twice, don't worry, we refund all that when we start to process your order. Okay, so anyways guys, thanks very much. I'll see you later. Bye. Happy reefing. Sniffle, sniffle.